Welcome back. The Egypt-brokered truce between Israel and Hamas expired on Friday and has been followed by a series of attacks by both sides. Tzipi Livni has travelled to Cairo for talks on the future of Israel's relationship with Gaza. So what are the realistic options? Well, with Livni and Ehud Olmert in discussions, it's possible the truce may be renewed, but the previous ceasefire was violated multiple times. This resulted in the deaths of tens of Palestinians, and there's no evidence a second truce would be any more successful. There's been growing talk of a large-scale military operation to crush Hamas. The Palestinian group's military has developed substantially in the last year, but would still be unlikely to stand up to the Israeli army. Such an operation would undoubtedly result in extensive casualties on both sides. Some senior Israeli figures are pushing for a tighter grip on the people of Gaza as a way of getting to Hamas. They claim cutting supplies to the area altogether would force the population to stop supporting the group. But some argue that Hamas has actually increased in popularity since the blockades began. Well, still with us are our guests in Jerusalem, Ephraim Imbar, in Cairo, Dr. Abdullah Al-Ash'al, and in Ramallah, Dr. Mustafa Al-Barghouti. Mustafa Barghouti, many would say, despite Hamas, in addition to Hamas being more popular since the siege began, it's also had rapid militarization and that it's really beefed up its firepower. Is that true?
Of course, there has been some preparations, and Hamas says that it is doing this within the context of self-defense or in preparation for a possible Israeli invasion. But there is no way you can compare the military equipment that Hamas has with what Israel has. Israel is the fourth largest, probably, military or fifth largest military power in the world. It is extremely powerful in terms of air force, which nobody has an answer to. There is no comparison at all. But the main idea here is that practically the war that is conducted on the people of Gaza today is not on Hamas. It is on the whole Palestinian population and on 1.5 million Palestinians who don't have food today. They don't have bread, they don't have food. The Palestinian Christians from Gaza have been forbidden from coming to Bethlehem to celebrate Christmas yesterday. These Christians are not Hamas. And the people who are suffering today in Gaza are mostly not Hamas. These are innocent civilians who are punished, who are dying because of lack of medications, who are unable to reach their universities because they are prevented from doing so, who are not finding fuel, who don't have electricity. This is a serious, inhuman situation, to the level that in the north of Gaza there is a risk of imminent sewage flood that could kill 10,000 people instantly because Israel is not allowing cement and construction material so that the French and the German governments would reconstruct the sewage system there and prevent such a disaster. This is a war on humanity.
All right, so thanks.
And it's not on Hamas only.
Okay, let's go to Abdullah Al-Ash'al. Apart from the exacerbating humanitarian crisis in Gaza, would you say a full-scale Israeli invasion of Gaza would be a catastrophic situation, particularly for future prospects of peace?
Yes, I think that all the signals are leading us to conclude that there is a large-scale invasion of Gaza by the Israelis, and this decision would be very catastrophic, not only for any peaceful solution in the future, but also for the Palestinian question itself. Because if Israel, in fact, proceeds with these plans against Gaza, this will, in fact, make some troubles for Hamas. And in this case, Hamas cannot be extricated. It would have other fronts for battling. And in this case, if Israel goes to Gaza so as to control Gaza for the sake of Abu Mazen, this will be a civil war among the Palestinians. And I think Gaza will see an explosion in the area, either on the borders of Egypt or in Israel itself, or it would be something very fallacious that you cannot imagine. So anyhow, Israel will take full responsibility for that, because Israel have violated the appeasement agreement, and Israel, in fact, is trying to incite Hamas and to incite all organizations. And if the appeasement agreement was taking place, why the embargo was imposed?
Okay.
I didn't see any reason for Israel to do that.
Sorry to interrupt you.
So this is why Egypt
Sorry to interrupt you. Let's go to Ephraim Imbar. You made your point. Mr. Imbar, there's an editorial today in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz. It says, I quote, "Past experience has often shown that aggressive shows of force, such as bombing civilian population centers and land invasions, have produced opposite results from what was intended." So it tells me that there is a big view within Israel that going into Gaza won't solve any of the problems.
I tend to agree that a large-scale ground invasion of Gaza may not be the best military approach to deal with a problem. I have always believed that it's useful to use force in a selective manner. I think that what Israel should do is to renew the targeted killing of the Hamas leadership. Basically, those people that order Hamas members to shoot at Israel should live no longer. This type of approach was quite useful in bringing Hamas to accept a truce in the past. And this is a selective use of force which with little collateral damage. And I think this should be the best approach.
You're calling for the assassination of elected politicians in a particular area. How can that possibly bring about peace?
Because those politicians want the destruction of the state of Israel. Those politicians have no intention whatsoever to make peace with Israel. Their clear ideology is the destruction of the Jewish state. They will never become partners to peace.
Does it matter? Sorry to interrupt you. Sorry. Does it matter in terms of Israeli policy to Gaza whether it's Tzipi Livni or Benjamin Netanyahu as prime minister?
I don't think there is a big difference between them concerning Gaza. As long as the Palestinians will not bring about a leadership that is moderate, there's no chance for peace. And Hamas is not this type of leadership, period.
Mustafa Barghouti, your response, sir.
I'm deeply shocked at what I have just heard. Isn't that the same logic that the Israeli guy is repeating, the same logic of Hitler himself, who was assassinating people and killing them because of their opinions? Isn't the renewing and calling for renewing assassination policy is nothing but a violation of human rights and violation of international law, where Israeli army is making of itself a prosecutor, a judge, and an executor at the same time? In which law this exists that you just kill people because you think they might be dangerous? This is a very serious downgrade of the level that Israeli policy have reached. And of course it's going to happen, but it will not solve any problems. There were times when Israeli army assassinated many Hamas leaders, but that produced more radical leaders. And what Israel does not understand, it cannot learn from history. In 1982, it invaded Lebanon to push out the PLO out of the Lebanese areas. The outcome was the creation of Hezbollah and Hamas. And if they crush Hamas tomorrow in Gaza, which I doubt they can, then they will create another, probably more serious and more tough force. What is problematic here is the insistence of the Israeli society, unfortunately, and the Israeli governments to ignore the cause of the problem. They keep concentrating on the symptom of the disease rather than the cause of the problem. And the cause of the problem has been 41 years of military occupation, the longest occupation in modern history, 60 years of dispossession of 5 million Palestinians, almost the longest in also modern history. And at the same time, they ignore the problem. Sometimes they accuse Palestinians of being linked to Soviet Union before and communists.
Okay.
And then because they were linked to Syrians, now they are talking about Islamists. Okay. It's about national liberation.
Okay,
it's
Mustafa
about the
Barghouti.
right of people to be free.
Okay, let's go to Abdullah Ash'al for a final thought. There's about 45 seconds left on the program. Briefly, sir.
Yes, I'm very sorry as well for these pronouncements on the part of your guest from Israel, because instead of looking for any peaceful solution and fair solution for the problem, he is looking for the extermination of the people there in Gaza. So if we call for the assassination of the leaders of Israel, I think it would be a crime, and we will be tried everywhere. So how can we try these people who are calling for the assassination of Hamas leaders? And if this is an official policy of the state of Israel, I think that this is outside the scope of the civilized nations. And we have to disclose that Israel itself doesn't deserve to be a party in the United Nations or a member of the United Nations. So I feel that we should find a solution. We should find something very equitable or something fair for both Hamas and Israel.
Okay.
I think that
Abdallah, sorry to interrupt you. We are running over time now, but I feel we have to give Ephraim Imbar a chance to defend himself. Yes, sir, very briefly, 30 seconds, final thought.
I would have expected of my learned colleagues to try to convince Hamas to change its basic ideology and to accept Israel. I think that the Palestinians will eventually be better off if they stop blaming Israel for everything and start doing something for themselves. A change in Gaza is possible if they'll bring about a different leadership that is intent on building, on doing well economically, rather than militarizing its society and focusing on the futile attempt to destroy Israel.
The solution is to end occupation.
Okay, all right, gentlemen, you've all made your point. It's an interesting discussion. We could go on forever. Mustafa Barghouti, Abdallah Al-Ash'al and Ephraim Imbar, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And thanks so much, the viewer, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye for now.